Um, Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining us today for this very special E3. And thank you to the Diversity and Inclusive Leadership Committee for helping to coordinate the efforts on this one. My name is Amy Fitzpatrick, and I'm the Director of Marketing for IAVM. And I just want to remind everyone that the E3 is a foundation initiative that began right as the COVID pandemic started and has sort of molded and shaped since the past 12 months. And we do this monthly, and we hope that you'll continue to join us. It helps to bring everyone together while we are separated still in many ways to learn and grow and engage one another. And our very special panel today will be talking to us about working moms and what it's like to be a working mom, and some of the things that we may not consider in our industry and really across the board about what it's like to be a working mom, and some of the things that they have to contend with on a daily basis, but also, the way in which these women are warriors on a daily basis as well. And just to sort of open it up, this was a discussion that I had had with the panel last week whenever we met to discuss today. One of my concerns when we started talking about the panel was that, as part of diversity and inclusive leadership, I felt very strongly at first about the fact that in focusing just on working moms, there's so many working dads that are out there. And, are we excluding someone when we're trying to include everyone? And I was telling them the little story about the guy that I'm dating right now, and that I had this conversation with him because he's a single father, owns his own company, works from home while homeschooling his boys, who are very rambunctious at the ages of 9 and 10. And he brought it very well to light for me in full circle because I am not a working parent. And he said it's very different for working moms as it is for a lot of working dads, in that I'm looked at as the hero because I am staying home with my children. I'm taking care of them, whereas there is this stigma in working moms and they are mom shamed. And we had a very long conversation about it and the importance of what these ladies are going through, that in some instances, not in all, that working dads may not experience because they are viewed as the heroes. They're staying home with their children. And that brought into a further conversation with our panelists about the fact that when I teach a graduate class for interviewing and resume writing techniques 10 years ago, when I first started teaching this class, we discussed that as a female, you don't discuss the fact that you have children. You don't discuss the fact that you're married. You keep your private life private. You keep your professional life professional, and the two should never meet. And we had to provide them with interviewing techniques about how to avoid those types of questions so that it wouldn't come across that an employer would think, well, she's married and she has children, and she's not going to be a dedicated employee because she has these other responsibilities. And in many ways, and it's really sad, those are still taught today. So it's very important that as women that we learn about being working parents and the expectations, and to make it more widely acceptable, especially with everything that's been going on the past year, about the struggles and how we as an industry can come together to support one another, and as how we as employers of women who are working and have children can support them as well. So at this point in time, I'm going to go on ahead and turn it over to Miss Jen, and Jen Norris is going to introduce herself, and then she will go on ahead and introduce our panel. And ladies, again, thank you so very much for joining us today and for offering up your expertise. Jen?
Thank you so much, Amy, and I really appreciate you framing this for us. I'm Jen Norris. I'm the Assistant Managing Director of the San Francisco War Memorial and Performing Arts Center. I use she, her pronouns, and I identify as white. For those of you who are without screens, I am a middle-aged woman with lots of curly platinum hair. I am wearing glasses and a red turtleneck. In the background, you can see the edge of my desk, a red side chair, and a beige couch. I'm excited to be here today with a panel of amazing industry professionals, women who work and who are also mothers. We represent a variety of experiences, and between us have children that range from 1-year-old to adults. I will have each woman introduce herself as we go through the session, but first I want to take a moment to acknowledge the people, a majority of them Asian women, who were murdered in their workplaces in Atlanta on Tuesday. Whether the killer's intentions were racially motivated or not, the impact has been a groundswell of fear and discussion around anti-Asian acts that are prevalent in much, if not all, of the United States. We can and we must do better as a people and as a nation united against hate. Silence is not acceptable. Let us each do our part to not look away, to have the difficult conversations necessary to meet this moment. Obviously, that's emotional for me, but I'm going to take a beat, and we've prepared something really excellent for you today. We have about probably 40 minutes of content and 20 minutes for Q&A. So here I go. Changing gears, just like a mom would, I suppose. I have always been an excellent employee. Like, I worked at McDonald's as a child, then Neiman Marcus. I've always worked every summer. I'm a hard worker. I'm timely, and I'm interested in learning and expanding my skill set while also being a part of a team. And my desire to be a parent has shaped my career path. I began as a lighting designer, regularly working 15-hour days and spending more time away from San Francisco than here. In preparation of becoming a parent, I sought a more stable profession and found a good fit as a venue manager, as the booking manager at the War Memorial. As a lesbian, becoming a parent would require great intentionality. My now wife and I pursued an open adoption in which our daughter's birth mother chose us to be the parents of her baby. That was more than 18 years ago, and our daughter Lily is now attending college online from home while also working part-time. Becoming a parent definitely made me a better manager. Seeing the full personhood in another being as early as 6 months made me recognize that I would only be successful as a manager by supporting staff and achieving our goals in a way that worked best for them as individuals. Prior to this, I have to confess, I was definitely trying to get everyone to do everything my way. Becoming a parent motivated me to continue to work hard, and it helped me understand the importance of being a strong role model. And yet, despite knowing how positive an impact parenthood had on my professional ability, I remained cautious about identifying as a parent in certain professional settings. There's definitely a taboo around it. And I was apprehensive when I needed to ask for time to provide care or transportation or attend an important event related to my child. And this was all pre-COVID. We know that COVID has brought to the forefront the challenges of being a working parent, and particularly a working mother, as mothers continue to carry a much greater burden of childcare, elder care, and household duties than their male counterparts. Being a woman and or a parent in many workplaces is still a challenge, but we know that improving conditions for mothers in the workplace will improve conditions for all. Today, our panelists, Cindy and Joelle, both work for Levy, an employer who has earned a top spot on Forbes' Best Employers for Diversity 3 years running now. Forbes highlighted the high number of female executives and ethnic diversity among management level employees across Levy and its subsidiaries. I look forward to learning from Cindy and Joelle about Levy's strategies during our panel. And now I'm going to turn it over to Cindy Van Burensburg to introduce herself and set the stage for us with some data on the status of women and mothers in the workplace. Cindy?
Thank you, Jen. I'm thrilled to be part of the panel to support working moms. As a mom myself now of a grown adult daughter, I can look back at my journey and just recognize there's things that I would do very different if I could. And so my goal today as a leader is really to create awareness of the challenges for working moms and maybe to help them so they don't have to make the same personal sacrifices I did in my career. And just to share a little bit of my journey before I talk about the data, I was married in college, so relatively young at an age, and had decided that because of what I saw around me or what I understood, that I needed to have a child before I started my career. So I actually planned to have a baby my graduating senior year of college. My husband and I did, and which we did. We had a beautiful baby girl. I can tell you at that time, my concern for being pregnant was reinforced. I was actually putting myself through college, working in a large 1,300 room national chain hotel in New Orleans as a front desk supervisor. And I can remember it like it was yesterday, my GM coming up to me and saying, "Gosh, nobody wants to see a pregnant person behind the front desk. It just makes guests uncomfortable and it doesn't look nice." Wow. That wasn't that long ago. So I got transferred to room service where I worked in a little booth where I couldn't be seen and I took orders. Now, it didn't work out so bad for me personally. I will say that journey, that was my first introduction to large scale food service, which now I have a privilege of really enjoying a beautiful career that I love. But that was 35 years ago, and we've made a lot of progress, but perhaps not enough, and there's still an opportunity to create awareness. So Amy, if you'll share the data slide. We'll pull that up in just a second. But to recognize some of those challenges that still exist, as you mentioned, Jim, moms still work double shift. As you'll see shortly, then the data, it shows that moms are more likely 1.5 times to carry the household duties, which can result in 3 to 4 hours extra a day on top of their work schedule for housework and childcare. So working mothers are exhausted. And then you take the pandemic of this past year and it's made it even more difficult. And it's even more difficult for Black mothers who face more challenges. The biggest challenge this past year for working moms is childcare and homeschooling. As a mother of an adult daughter now, and who's listening into this panel, I'm glad to have her. I can say that I cannot imagine having to do my job today and homeschool. My heart really goes out to those working mothers trying to do both remotely. It's incredible what they do. Mothers have always as well faced biases in the workplace. And COVID-19, as you can see, has elevated those perceptions that mothers can't be truly invested if they're both focused on family, that they aren't 100% committed. And that's just not true. You heard Amy, if you joined us right at the beginning, talk about the single dad that is in her life. And he's looked at as a hero. Moms are not always single moms. It's not always the case, or even working mothers. Not shown in the data that you have here in front of you, but job losses among women during the pandemic represented 58% of the job losses, while they only recognize 32% of the global workforce. But I guess the number that makes me most nervous on the data in front of you, especially as a business leader, is 1 in 4 women right now, 1 in 4, are contemplating either downshifting or leaving their careers altogether. As a business leader, that scares me to death. I get to work with some really incredibly and talented working mothers and working women, and I would not want to lose any one of them on the team. They make us better today. So talking about those incredibly working mothers in our organization, I'm proud to turn the conversation over to Joelle Alexander. I've had the pleasure of working with Joelle for the last 10 years. Most recently as a partner, as my new business partner for the Levy Convention Center Group. And Joelle also co-chairs Levy's Inclusion Action Council, I should say Diversity and Inclusion Action Council. And for me, Joelle's not only just an amazing business partner, peer, but an incredible friend and mentor.
Thank you, Cindy. And as Cindy mentioned, I'm truly delighted to be here and to be on this fabulous panel to unpack this topic about working moms. As she alluded to, I am Joyelle Alexander. I have been with Levy about 10 years. I currently serve as the Vice President of Business Development for Levy Convention Centers, and I work alongside Cindy as her business partner. In my home life, I am a wife and a mother of 3 beautiful children. I have a son that's 23, and I have fraternal twins, a boy and a girl who are 15 and freshmen in high school, albeit virtual. And, something Amy said previously that really resonated with me was the comment about the advice given to college students, male and female, and whether or not they have a family. And it jogged my memory to 20 plus years ago, graduating from school, preparing to go into corporate America. And I had a mentor say to me, Joyelle, never talk about politics, religion, race, or your family at work. And that really stuck with me. For years, it stuck with me. And I would try so hard to separate my work life and my personal life, looking for that perfect utopia of work-life balance. And I tried, and I tried, and I failed, and I failed. I never could feel good about the time I was spending at home and the time I was spending at work. It was just never enough either place. And so if this was going to work for me and my household, I had to do things differently. I had to take a different approach, a more integrated approach, and give myself the permission for these very important areas of my life to coexist and to work in synergy with one another. And I would literally tell myself, Joyelle, you can be a great mom, and you can be a great wife, and you can be a great employee at the same time. It was like my mantra. And I was looking for this perfect trifecta. So it's more like work-life blend, which Jen mentioned earlier, where it was like everything had to come together and work in synergy. And honestly, when it started working that way for me, my performance elevated because I was truly being myself in the space. And in my prior role, I was the area director of sales for Levy in Atlanta, and I had the Georgia World Congress Center, Mercedes-Benz Stadium, Phillips, which is now State Farm Arena. And I used to be very intentional with my team about talking about my family life. I would share the good, the bad, the ups and the downs. If you ask my kids, they'd probably say I overshared, but that's okay because I wanted my team to know that I was creating a space where parenthood was welcomed. And I will tell you, this work-life blend paradigm shift has only intensified with COVID. I mean, at some point, I'm sure each and every one of you have had that moment at home where the phone rings, the dog barks, the cat meows, the kids scream. I'm tucked away because we have a puppy, so you don't want to hear the puppy barking. And you know what? That's okay. And as employers, we've had to create a space and give our team members the grace to know that that's okay, that we are human and we're coming together. And I'll tell you, I believe our company is so much better for it because I feel a level of connectivity, camaraderie, just teamwork, family, like I've never felt before. So for that, I will tell you that's a benefit that has come out of COVID. And before I pass it over to Shelly, I do want to caution you, as you work for this work-life blend, or maybe you've already started, one thing I'll warn you is that when you are working from home and you're trying this blend, you can get caught up in working all the time. And so for that, I will just encourage you to still put up some boundaries with the blend. Maybe unplug the telephone, maybe turn off the computer, maybe turn off the TV so that you're truly and fully present for the task at hand. Now I get the pleasure of introducing Shelly Alvinis. And Shelly is a true warrior as she welcomed her 3rd child a month ago last year. So she was dealing with COVID and a brand new baby. So for that, I applaud you, and I'll pass it over to Shelly.
Thank you so much, Joyelle. And I appreciate all the words that everyone has said. And I cannot agree more that we need to celebrate families, rewrite the narrative as we have talked about in regards to not talking about that. As much as an organization is seeking if you're the right fit for them, what I know is important in my career is is that organization right for me? Do they celebrate their families? Do they have flexibility? And a year ago, as Joelle mentioned, I welcomed my third child. I have a little bit about me real quick. I have an 11-year-old, a 6-year-old, and a 1-year-old, and she just started walking yesterday. So that's a little exciting. And I've been married for a year and a half to my wonderful husband. And so all great things, but I will let everyone know, a year ago when we welcomed our daughter Caroline, I did suffer from postpartum depression, and I would say I still do a little bit, and it's something that does take some time to go away. And I mention that because it is real and it should be talked about. And I think a silver lining of this pandemic is that there seems to be more conversation on mental health, but definitely not enough. And so I want to talk about it. And if anything, it's a part of a therapy for myself to talk about it. And it is normal. And I know those that are listening, the many that are listening right now, someone has in the past or is probably currently suffering as well. And so please know that you're not alone. And so when you're balancing home life and work life and postpartum, it's a lot, and even without postpartum, it's a lot. So just know you're not alone when it comes to being a working mom. And that when I was about to welcome my first daughter, I was scared. I was absolutely scared. I had been at the organization I was at previously for a few years, and I left. I put in my notice, and I didn't even give my chance to talk to my director at the time, because my director is such an amazing man and supportive of me. And I'm happy that he got me back, and we talked about it. Hey, what can we do? He offered flexibility. He is a family guy, and so he celebrates family. And so one thing I would highly recommend is speak up. I regret not speaking up about my family sooner in my career. I'm doing some of that now, so I want to empower you to speak up about your needs. And that's why I know that we're all here today to hopefully help rewrite the narrative. And so please speak up. And so I'm grateful for him for supporting me and offering flexibility, and it's helped me in my career today. The organization I am at right now is different. It is owned and operated by a city, which I'm very grateful for, but sometimes there are more limitations. But I think we can still get past those. We need more flexibility, but if we want that, we have to talk about it. And I don't want anyone listening to this to think that they can't further progress their career. Don't stop. Trust your dreams, trust your curiosity, and don't stop. We're here and we're moving forward. And I think it's great that we can have flexibility, as Joelle mentioned. My phone's ringing. as Joelle mentioned as well. When I was at home during COVID, I wasn't given the opportunity to connect with my team. Here I am, as much as I want to be home with my family, I wanted to be with my work family. And it's pretty strict, and I get it. You're on maternity leave. Like, hey, you need to be on leave. And then once the older children's school was closed down, and we needed to find care, I found the opportunity to use all the benefits that I had. But that was really hard for me, because I wanted to be flexible, because I wasn't given the opportunity to work from home. But I truly feel and want to continue to push that narrative that there should be more flexibility, and I'll continue to push that narrative, because I know that being a mom is a superpower. We kick butt, and we're great at multitasking. And though it's not in a window 8 to 5, maybe, I'll probably get more work done throughout the day. But we do need to shut down, as Joelle mentioned. It's important to be in one location and give your kids the attention that they love and deserve. And I love being a mother, and I love my career, and I think it's important that we can do both, and we do both.
Thanks, Shelly.
Thank you.
One of the things, I appreciate all of you and what you've said. I want to also just call out Shelly, because amidst having 3 children and amidst having a big job and such, she also started a little group for women supporting women that I attended recently that she had put out on her Instagram. You know, just knowing that she's also running, as we heard earlier, the creating the content for the Region 7 meeting. So she has plenty of volunteer activity. But I loved that you gathered a group of women to just support women. It was about, maybe there were a dozen of us in 4 or 5 states at different ages and stuff. And it was just cool to sit around and just be present for each other. Sometimes just appreciating, you know, what other people's burdens are and reflecting back that they're real. So thanks for doing that, Shelly. I was talking to Cindy, and we were talking about women and mothers at home, either due to layoffs or the necessity of caring for children or elders in their lives during COVID, and the hurdles there were for them contemplating to come back to work. I mean, to go from 0 to 100 is going to be hard for a lot of people, right? Once you're home. And so that blend of what Shelly was talking about, of like allowing people to work from home a few days or something, or maybe job sharing or whatever. But I know, Cindy, you've been hosting some town halls, some listening calls with Levy employees about, and what are you hearing from them, from what people need?
So much of what everyone has shared already, the need to, what Shelly spoke to, flexibility. I think right now that is probably the most important thing. And as business leaders and managers, I think too, the one important thing we can do most of all is ask questions and really listen to what people need. And so as I've been having those conversations, I can tell you there's a lot of anxiety out there. Jen, to your point, people are either been working remote or have been at home for a period of time, and they're really nervous about getting back to work at the level expected. And people have smaller teams now and are carrying more and wearing more hats naturally as we rebuild our business. And so I think that we just need to recognize there's a lot of anxiety. You know, giving you some specifics on things I've heard, people are having to make decisions today about the future without a whole lot of knowns for their children. One of my general managers was sharing with me that, you know, she had to make a decision last month about summer camp for her kids and invest in it today when she really didn't know whether or not she would even be back in her venue come summer. And so you can imagine the decisions that are being made to try to figure out, and we're all across the board, if people are still homeschooling in different parts of the country, or if, you know, they're able to go to summer camp. So as we get back to business, if we can really listen to people and hear what they need, often they can help us solve that problem. The other thing that I heard a lot about was fear about people feeling really like that they're proving their worth. And so I think as we really look at what is important, we need to look at the results that our teams are delivering and our individuals are delivering, and less about activity, less about time in the office, so that you really can give people flexibility as they're coming back to work. Those were the key points that I hear. I mean, there's not one answer. We're not always going to get it right. So we have to continue to ask the right questions, and most importantly, continue to listen.
Yes, the listening is a huge piece. And again, when we talk about flexibility, like, it makes me think, I do a lot of work in the disability sector and advocacy around that. And there's a concept there called the curb cut effect, which basically speaks to how when we made the effort to make curb cuts for wheelchair users, the people who benefited were not just the wheelchair users, people with, you know, if you have ever had to move a stroller through a city, if you've ever had to use a walker or help someone with a walker, delivery people use them, skateboarders use them, it improved the world for so many people. And that wasn't its intention, but a rising tide lifts all boats, and creating equity for one creates equity for all. So again, like, yes, we're talking about working moms, but really we're talking about that we're each individuals. We each have different needs. I have a colleague who cares for an older parent. Basically, that person's schedule needs are the same as mine was when I had a toddler, right? Just at the beginning of the day, you had some stuff to do, and then some end of the day. And then, so maybe you needed a shorter chunk of time. And especially in the event business where we're all, we're where we need to be when we need to be there. We work incredibly long and flexible days. So the part where we're giving people credit for FaceTime in the office, and kind of that martyrdom. Shelly and I were talking about the kind of martyrdom prize, right? Of like, I was here longest. I think that person, we should stop thinking of that person as the winner. Maybe they're the not the winner. Maybe they're there isn't a loser, but but they did have to stay a really long time to get the same amount done. So Shelly, I know you referred a little bit to a relationship with a good boss or a mentor who pulled you back in. And then I think of you as the person who's always promoting these relationships between women. So talk about how does that help you do your job better? Like, why is that your core always for you?
Absolutely. I feel that there's something about a connection with other women, whether they're in the same season as you or not, children, careers, it doesn't matter. There's something that just builds you up. And I think I've mentioned, it's a superpower. You feel that you're complimented, you're encouraged, while your partner may be doing that and they're doing an amazing job doing that, your friends and your family. But when you have this connection of women that can be known to just, I'll just say be mean, that movie Mean Girls, we don't need that. What we need is to empower each other and build each other up and connect with each other, collaborate with each other, and celebrate each other's accomplishments. It doesn't matter the size. And so I know personally, just through my journey, that through all my seasons, that when I'm able to connect with other women, new women that I make connections with, and ones I've known for a long time, it just brings peace, and it's kind of a self-love, just finding a time to connect. And and I really feel that it's our job. It's our job to build each other up, because we don't know if anyone else is. So we don't know what anyone else's story is. And so if we can compliment another woman, or just compliment anyone and everyone, ultimately just be a kind human being, then we can just really change the outcome. And when it comes to the topic that we're talking about, I think if we're all on the same page, then it's amazing what can happen in organizations.
Yeah, I mean, relationship is, one of the reasons I think that women are really good at interpersonal relationships. And it's one of the reasons that we're so highly valued in the hospitality and entertainment sectors, which is exactly what's been impacted in COVID, of course. And then at the same time, helping children at home and all of that have made it a very complicated year for people. But I think another part of this year for me, which I referred to earlier with the conversation around the anti-Asian racism, is that Cindy mentioned, Joelle, that you serve on the Diversity Council for Levy. And I'm just wondering, in our preparations for this, we talked a little bit about how the racial unrest in June has provided opportunities to have authentic conversations. And why it's important for employers and managers to provide those opportunities for employees. Want to tell us a little bit about that?
Sure. As I mentioned previously, we've really seen this paradigm shift of work-life blend, and that means bringing your whole self to work. And as employers, that means we have to celebrate and care for the whole person. And that is the person that is talented and gifted and can take care of the job responsibilities, that comes to work, but that's also the person that comes to work that may be struggling with the effects of the pandemic or the social unrest. And I'll tell you, over the course of this past year, probably experienced some of the toughest moments of my life because a lot of actions that used to exist pre-COVID. So for me, it's sports, a basketball game, a travel, let's go on vacation, let's go see grandma, let's do this, let's do that. All of that was gone, Jen. And I was forced, my husband and I, to really face all the ugliness that was taking place in America without any way to get out, right? So as a result, my kids were asking tough questions. Those 15-year-old twins were knocking on the door and talking about what they just saw on TV or what they may have just heard on their virtual schooling session. And we were forced to have those conversations. We weren't ready. Again, we had that conversation with our 23-year-old when we were preparing him for college, and the ugly side of, the tough part about being Black in America. Not everybody loves you, son. And we were forced to have that conversation with our twins, but we weren't ready to because we were shielding them. And I think the same holds true for work. We were forced to have some difficult conversations. And remember what I told you about the mentor, don't talk race at work. So then I'm forced outside my comfort zone. And sometimes I would tell you it was painful, but necessary. I like to say when we know better, we do better, and we can't assume people know. And kudos to our leadership team, to my DIAC co-chair, all of the executive sponsors, leadership like Cindy. We all started coming together, having these difficult conversations. And when I tell you difficult, I mean difficult. There were moments that there was tear shedding. There were aha moments. There was some restlessness, and 10 o'clock at night, the cell phone is still going back and forth where people are trying to unpack. But I'm telling you something, it has been transformational for our organization. Yes, there's still work to be done, but transformational for our organization and the individuals that participated. I received so many notes and emails from individuals thanking me for being a part of these conversations and helping them to feel better about what's going on and start to heal. And for that, I am grateful. So for anybody that hasn't had those conversations, I do encourage you, please find the time and the strength, a little bit of courage to have those difficult conversations. Two things, your team members need you, whether they ask for it or not, they need you. And secondly, your company in the end will be better for it. So thanks, Jen.
Well, thank you. I can tell that your employees and the organization, should be very grateful for your honesty and your transparency and your authenticity, right? Like bringing your full self, like it takes a bravery, right? Every day to show up. And one of the ways that I do that for my team is to share many an imperfection along the way of, to just, sometimes I don't know the answers and then we go find them together. And I think another important part of these conversations is to realize that the conversations themselves are super important. And I know that organizationally leaders like solutions and they like things to be folded up neatly and done. We did it, right? And that's not what these conversations are about, right? It's process, it's progress, not perfection. It's continuing to loop people in. It's that 10 o'clock like clarification as someone's unpacking. It's all of it. But I too, in those conversations that I've had with my employees, I just feel so much closer to a group of people. Like when we get to open these places again, we're in there. Like we're gonna be a unstoppable team because we know things about each other that we didn't know before. And so anyway, we were getting some good questions. I want to ask one more question of Cindy around, just understanding. I know that there's some protocols and practices that Libby has around that are quite flexible, and some just simple things that made it so much easier for every employee to be able to do their work effectively. Can you share a few of those things with us, Cindy, before we go to Q&A?
Sure. And just in usual fashion from working remote, I just got a note, my internet's unstable. So hopefully I stay with you. But before I jump into those ideas real quick, to take a step back on the why with Levy, I think it's an important reminder for all of us. is that if you want to be the leader in the industry and really be innovative, you've got to have an inclusive team, people that come from all different walks of life that will challenge you and think different than yourself. And so that is really the why behind all of these conversations. You heard Joelle talk about the listening calls. That's really, I'd echo that. We can't rest on our laurels. Change doesn't happen just in a moment. To your point, Jen, it's not neat and nice and folded into a package, but it's really a journey. We're going to continue those. Some other core initiatives that we've done is unconscious bias training for everyone, to make people aware that perhaps they had biases that they didn't know, establishing resource groups, and then expanding our DIAC structure that Joelle's founder of it. Those were all critical, but there were some really simple things too, in addition to asking the questions we can all ask tomorrow morning. What is getting in your way? Where are the barriers? What could I start doing for you now? Is as simple as it may seem. A couple of years ago, we stopped ordering workstations for people, a big old heavy computer that ties you to your office and to a desk. Everybody got laptops instead of a workstation. And so that if you needed to leave tomorrow afternoon for a child's event or anything else in your life, you could do so and still get your work done and project done at your convenience. Again, it's about measuring results and not activity. We talked a lot about work-life blend in a couple of different ways today. And one of the things that you heard Joelle talk about was unplugging. And so we eliminated earned vacation and said, guys, look, you're important. Your well-being and your mental health is important. And so we eliminated earned vacation and said, take it when you need it. Now, I will tell you, when it first started, I think that a lot of people ended up working more than taking time off, just because it's sometimes many of our nature to do so. So a couple of things we put in play was vacation buddies, and these came from best practices from peers of mine, but we are always sharing ideas. But having vacation buddies so people cover your work while you're gone, and then celebrating when people leave. When they go on vacation, we call it leaving loud. Celebrate them going on vacation. And so those are just all things we could all start doing tomorrow to just make it easier for everyone, whether it's working moms or anyone else in the organization. We have to do it together as we get back to business and return and rebuild. We've got to be flexible and support each other.
I couldn't agree more. Yeah, I mean, the word, I think if somebody, I love those, the word clouds. I think the word cloud for our session is like flexible. Like every one of us has said it 3 times. And then there's been some authenticity, communication, relationship, like very much on the, meeting people where they are, right? And there's not a single employee, regardless of their parental status or gender or sexuality or race, that isn't going to succeed better if we take the time to acknowledge who they authentically are and what they need to do their job best and to be successful, and making us all fit one size fits all kinds of jobs, particularly in our industry that's so creative and that's so people-based. It's just, you would think it would be intuitive. So I want to go to some of these questions, and here's a series of questions. Sounds like probably from someone who has small children. So, which all of us have had at some time, and some of us have right this minute. This person asks, as a mother, how do you explain to smaller children why you have to spend time away at work? What can working moms do to manage their time better? And what about mom guilt? How do you deal with it? Does it get easier as time goes on? So there you go. Anybody have the answers to those? Shelly?
I'll just say, I don't know if I'm answering all 3 of them, but as much as we need to celebrate our families, we need to celebrate our careers. And this is what we love. I love what I do, and I love being home. So, from the beginning, when I had my daughter 11 years ago, I celebrated the job. I brought her to work when I could, when it was okay and safe, events, and they all three, well, not the youngest, have been to my place of employment, and they would know when we drove by, and they understood what I did. And so, talk about it at home and what they understand. My hope is that they will look up to me as much as they look up to their fathers and see, wow, this is what my mom does. She's awesome. And so I can't express enough, just as much as we celebrate families, celebrate what you do, your work, because it's just as much part of our life. It's our second family. And I don't remember the other two questions.
They were about managing your time, working moms managing time, and mom guilt, and how do you deal with it, and does it get easier as time goes on? For me, I too always brought my child to work. I love to work. One of the best times I spent with my daughter is that because she was in childcare from 10 months old on, maybe even sooner, we rode to work together every morning. So I would talk about what I was going to go do. I'm always excited in the morning. I'm a morning person. She is too. So we'd be blabbing away about what we were going to go do. And then at the end of the day, when I drive her home with me, we just have a ritual around, what's the funniest or what's the strangest thing that happened to you today? And if you do public assembly work, you're never short of a really good story, right? I mean, it could be as simple as what's in Lost and Found. It could be the story of a flood or a fire. It could be, I looked out into the courtyard and there was a naked man doing calisthenics. And then I got to watch the guards try to figure out what to do with the naked man from my window. Like they approached him with a towel. It's very funny to watch. But anyway, I would just tell these stories. I think that her feeling about work is that it's a super fun, cool place where you're in community with other people. And I can see the fruits of my labor in that she's been a volunteer at the zoo for years and years and years. Even now, she prefers, instead of going away to college and not working for 4 years, she's actively working, has all the way through COVID, found these little jobs to do and I think, so that's, I started making my job seem cool from when she was an infant. The only guilt I ever felt was on that handoff in the morning where I'm like, oh, and it never got better, frankly. Whoever I'm talking to, like I would drop her off at high school, and if she was having a bad day, I'd be sad that I had to say bye to her. But she also then has to be an independent human. So others managing time better, guilt. Any thoughts there, ladies? You want to?
Sure, I'll jump in. I think for me, I definitely would have to agree with Jen and Shelly that I celebrated work with my kids and brought them to the office. I had the privilege of, before I was in this role, working under Cindy. And I'll tell you, it was just such a family environment. I mean, Cindy knows my kids and she says hi to my kids, and I'm on the phone and they're like, it's Cindy on the phone, and they'll come running with the cell phone. And that's because of the environment we've created at work. And so I will say it does get better and easier over time. When they were smaller, I mean, again, 10 years here in the business, they were 5 when I started. So they were little guys, but they've always thought I had a cool job, and everybody in the office would stop when they came in and entertain them and bring them snacks, and chef would make them all kinds of food. And so for that, they were always super excited about mom's job and always questioned what I really did. They were like, you always just have so much fun at work. I'm like, that's only because you're there. And as far as the time and managing it, I really started implementing time blocks. And it made me very productive in that I knew I have 2 hours to get this done, and so sometimes that meant I had to close the door and I couldn't talk to everybody that walked down the hall that wanted to decide what we're going to have for lunch, or I couldn't necessarily go to lunch, but I had to stay again and unplug and be fully present at the task at hand, because I knew that when 3 o'clock rolled around, I probably had to shift to something else. And so I do encourage the time blocking, even when we're home with that work-life blend. If you are still working from home, or at some point you do, block out even time on your calendar. I got to give Cindy credit for this too, because I'm like, what's going on with this hold on your calendar? I need to talk to you, you know, and she was like, I'm blocking me time. I'm like, okay, fine. I'm doing the same. And again, it's like, and not feeling guilty about it, because we would go through a whole day and recognize that we didn't even have an opportunity to get anything to eat because we were on calls from the morning to the evening. And so for that, I started implementing that time blocking. Or at 5:30, guess what? Everybody knows I'm supposed to be working out. As Jen and Cindy said, you're not getting on the call at 5:30, you're supposed to train, right? Because that is just trying to make sure that I take time not only for my wife duties, my children duties, work, but also for myself. So I do encourage the time blocking, and also to share, even with your spouse, if you do have one, what you're working on. Because another benefit for COVID for me is that people now respect the amount of work I do a little bit differently, because they see the effort and the grind. Unlike before, they're like, oh, just mom's flying to, you know, California again. But now they're like, gosh, you're still busy. And so they've participated, where like they're setting up the Zoom, they're flicking on the camera. They're like, you can use my room because it's better here. And, you know, again, I say it's a little bit more pressure because I'm in business development. So they're like, did we win the deal? You know, so that's a little stressful. But other than that, I would tell you, it's been great to see the level of respect. Even my husband's like, I'll go get some dinner, babe, since you're working on that. And honestly, I wouldn't have gotten that in the past. It would just assume that dinner's still going to be on the table no matter what I had going on. So I wish I had started sharing a little bit more earlier with them, but it definitely has gotten better.
Okay, well, so here's a question. I have a 13-year-old daughter and looking for ideas to help her better understand and gain more exposure to what I do at work. Do any of your organizations have programs to support that?
We do have Bring Your Kids to Work Day, and so, which is fun because then everyone gets to know each other's kids and they get to know each other as well. And so I would encourage that. If, as an employer, if your employer doesn't do it today, bring it forward as an idea.
We also, when we have like our potlucks and things like that, we plan them at a time to optimize when people could have their families join them. And then, yeah, we have these beautiful venues. So another thing that we do at work, because we're a performing arts center, is that employees are offered complimentary tickets to things so that they can really bring their kids and have a great experience. And so that, you know, the magic of the theater can trickle down to another generation, because we need to keep replacing ourselves, because who would want to work this hard if they didn't understand the magic? So but to follow up with that, I would reiterate what Cindy said about, as a manager and a director, I have been meeting with my racial equity team that I formed 9 months ago. It's a council of 8 to 10 people in various places in our organization, most of whom would never have an hour every 2 weeks with an executive. And the things I learn about their experiences from just asking open-ended questions is amazing. So I would encourage you to like, if you feel bold enough, take it directly to your manager or a director, an executive level person, that this would be a cool program to have at work. And if you don't feel that comfortable, then find a few other of your colleagues to put it together with you. But like, it's amazing what we don't know at the top that we haven't thought of. It's not that we thought, ooh, that's a bad idea. We just, our focus goes toward whatever is on fire, basically, or the person who's asking us for something. So be bold. I can't imagine ever as a manager not being grateful for a suggestion, even if I can't execute it immediately.
With that, Jen, I believe, as I mentioned, I wish I would have spoken up, 11 years ago, because I wouldn't have potentially have left this industry. And now as the general manager, I do have that opportunity, as we reopen and rehire, I want to inform my employees, to celebrate their families. I want them to know that during the conversation, not to be hesitant to talk about their family during the interview. And I know that's not where everyone is at this time, and that's why we're having this conversation. But again, I hope to encourage and all of the panelists here were here after this and available to get advice from, because I don't know if we'll be able to answer all the questions, but please reach out to us and hopefully we can help you and empower you, encourage you to have that conversation with your management team.
Here's one that's about just how COVID has worn on all of us. This person writes, my perspective has narrowed so much over the last year. Have you experienced this, and how have you tried to widen your perspective when you feel this happening? Anybody have feeling the weight of the COVID? I know that what I've done, and I actually know the person asking the question, so she'll know this answer, but I've just really tried to create really create balance in my world as much as I can. And that means having a hobby, doing some reading, making sure I walk with a friend, make sure I do something nice for someone else every day. This is a practice of mine. I have a drawer of greeting cards. Probably anybody who's known me very long has received one at some point in time, because I love to write a card to say, hey, I'm thinking about you. I just love the mail, keeping the mail alive and keeping greeting cards in business. But and now I was still feeling like something in me was lacking, and it was volunteering. So now every Friday I go to work the pop-up food bank for 2 hours, and I use my vacation time to do that. But it was something that was missing, and I could just like identify like what is missing during COVID, and it was working side by side with people, because we're not allowed to do that, right? But if we're essential workers, we can. So just building bags of food, we feed 1,000 people in 5 hours, creating bags of food in a parking lot, rain or shine, makes me feel better. So that's how I've been finding perspective, is to look out there. I want to be cognizant, Amy, that it is 1 o'clock. I don't know if we should continue with some questions, or if you want to wrap it up. You do these more regularly than I do. What do you suggest?
I'm going to leave it strictly up to you guys. We do have a large drop in the participants.
Okay.
Do you want to take one final question that you feel may address everyone for the most part and help them out quite a bit? And then
I think what we'll do, since you're going to let me decide, is we'll still have the chat, right, Amy? So we could write answers back to these people, to the questions. So I'm just going to ask everybody, each of you ladies, to tell me if you have a closing thought. If you don't, that's fine. But if something's come up for you that you're like, I so wanted to make sure that we got this takeaway in, then, let's hear it now, and then we'll close it up.
I can jump in. Okay. And I would just say I've looked at a few of the questions in the chat, and we'll definitely make sure that we answer those. And Shelly's touched on this, but please have the courage to rewrite the narrative, because young ladies coming behind us are depending on us as well. And so although it may make us feel a little bit uncomfortable in the process, it is important for us to push the boundaries so people can start to think about things a little bit differently. And it really just starts with all of us. And so I saw a question about telling people that I'm getting ready to want to have a kid. That is okay, and don't feel like you need to apologize. I'm unapologetic about the fact that I love my kids to the bone gristle. I am a great wife, and I want to kill it at work. I'm not sacrificing any of the areas. I just feel like you have to be vocal about it, and you have to celebrate it, and you have to cheer people on from the sideline, as Shelly alluded to. So please, if you need help, even in having those conversations, like she said, reach out and we can help you try to role play to get it right. But at the end of the day, if we don't start pushing the boundaries and having those conversations, no one will. So I appreciate everybody participating, but that was really just heavy on my heart when you're talking about COVID and the effects. I'm like, guys, everybody's depending on us to try to change this narrative, and it can be done. And it's kudos to everybody here and IABM for facilitating this discussion, because it is super important to our industry and to the future of women in the business. So thank you.
I'll go ahead and go next. I think in regards to that last question that Jen spoke about, I feel that this year is been a year for everyone. Everyone's gone through many emotions, but I feel that it's been an opportunity to find, more about myself and what I enjoy. And I encourage everyone to look into themselves and find time for themselves. As Joelle mentioned, block out that time for yourself. It's amazing what you'll find, and really trust yourself. And a lot of women we sometimes find it honorable to dismiss ourselves, dismiss our dreams, and moving forward with our careers. And we don't need to do that. And I just want to encourage everyone to speak up. And if you need that extra push, don't hesitate to bring other women together and feel the confidence to have that discussion. And it doesn't need to be an argument, it is more of a discussion. We need to rewrite the narrative. So we want to continue to celebrate not only us as women, but as mom, as we hear, the future isn't, moms. The future, the present is moms. We are here, and we are great at what we do. We're selfless. We're multitaskers. We want the best for our children. We want the best for our employees. So again, I just hope that you feel a little bit more empowered to be part of that narrative and that discussion.
Such a good point, Shelly. Thank you. I would say for me, I guess, if I had to tell my younger self, is like, whenever you look around the room and you think everybody else has it all figured out and you've got some self-doubt, just know that that's not the case, and that your feelings are normal, and everybody has self-doubt at time. And surround yourself by people that will, be your champion. If you don't have someone that you think of as a mentor, then ask someone, pick your mentor. It doesn't have to be a formal relationship. And I always feel like you should have a mentor, and you should be mentoring someone. I can tell you that whenever I've mentored anyone, I've always learned more and have been convicted more from what I'm sharing with them that I need to also do in my life. So again, be careful about looking out around the room and thinking everybody else has it figured out and you don't. That's not true. That's a natural feeling that you have, and we've all been there, and we just need champions in our life and people that are going to support us.
Excellent. Thank you so much. Well, and when we say rewrite the narrative, there's one thing that wasn't said today that was said when we discussed amongst ourselves, and that's, some of you might not have heard this, but there was an old saying that we're supposed to work like we're not a mother, and mother like we don't work. And that's the narrative we're trying to get away from, right? So thank you all for listening and for your time. There's a great event coming up on Monday that I think Amy's going to talk about right now. I put a link in the chat. So Amy, over to you.
Thanks for putting that in the chat for me, Jen. Just thank you to each of you on the panel, Jen, Shelly, Joelle, Cindy. You guys have been amazing to work with. These webinars every single month open my eyes as someone who works for the association, and I get this privilege of getting to know you guys on a little bit more personal basis than I would at any other event. So thank you very much for giving your time today and giving your expertise and just your experience to all of us. If you, as for everyone in attendance today, if you've not already registered for Monday, Jen put the link in the chat session for you. We are having, in celebration of March being Women's History Month, we're having an event, and it is sponsored by our 100 Plus Women of IAVM initiative, to where we will open up with just a little bit of information and then spread out into some breakout sessions to where you can learn more about, if need be, on interviewing, on resume writing, on leadership in times of COVID. The sessions that have been created are amazing. And I think if you can spare a couple of hours with us on Monday, you're going to learn even more. And then afterwards, we're going to have an hour networking sessions where we can all get back together and talk a little bit more and find out what everyone's doing. And just as a quick heads up as well, Venue Connect this year will be live in Atlanta at Georgia World Congress. And we are exceptionally excited about this. It was announced in our newsletter this week that we will be back in action, and we are so excited with IVM and looking forward to seeing each of you in person in August. So be on the lookout for more information regarding that and for more information regarding our April E3 for the foundation. And again, thank you, ladies, so very much for all of your advice and words of wisdom today. It was amazing to hear even more about your stories. And I wish everyone a wonderful afternoon. So thank you guys very much.
Be well, everybody. Take care of each other. Make somebody laugh today.
Be well. Thank you.